What's going on, guys? So today I'm really excited because I've actually got a friend of mine, Gabby, on the podcast, and this is going to be kind of an interesting conversation because it's a fairly big departure from the normal podcast where we talk a lot about like research or technical heavy information. This one's going to be just a little bit more of like an open discussion, kind of talking about male and female social dynamics. So this was kind of a bit of an interesting evolution. So essentially, I did a podcast with Steffi Cohen not too long ago, and we talked about women in the fitness industry, and that was a great episode. And so if you guys know Steffi Cohen and you're interested, definitely go check it out. Gabby ended up reaching out to me and just saying that she liked it, and we kind of had like a little bit of a back and forth. And she actually had some really great ideas about basically the episode that we're doing right now. And so I wanted to invite her on and have this chat. So first of all, Gabby, thanks so much for jumping on. I'm really pumped up to kind of have this chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So before we get into it, do you want to just give a little bit of an introduction about who you are and some of the things you're doing so people can kind of get to know you a little bit?
Sure. Well, my name is Gary. I'm from Venezuela, but I live in the United States. I am a full-time nutrition coach and I also power lift. I have to admit, Daniel, that I was a little bit nervous of being here today because you have interviewed so many people that I look up to, like being called Pacifico and Astrid. So for you to open up your space to me for your audience is a great honor.
Well, no, I'm glad to have you here, and I appreciate you saying that. So Gabby and I actually met. We both attended the same conference a while back, and just kind of stayed connected. And so yeah, it ended up being pretty cool. So basically, I want to kind of preface the conversation that we're going to have. So essentially, both Gabby and I basically put up a post on our stories and had a bunch of people submit questions kind of pertaining to male female social dynamics, mostly related to the fitness industry, but I got quite a few that departed from that a little bit. And so we're basically just going to go through, ask the questions, and then we're going to give our own perspectives. Now, you know, I'll be honest, like I am more conservative in my values, so that is my bias. And everything that we're saying right now is just, kind of off the cuff. These are our opinions. And, I mean, we're basically just going to kind of highlight both the male and female perspectives, at least my perspective and Gabby's perspective, because some of these questions are really, really interesting. And I think, there's a lot less division than it would appear. Like you look on social media and it looks like a lot of men and women are kind of at odds with each other, but it's very rare, at least in my opinion, where you'll meet someone in real life and then you'll actually really be going head to head. A lot of the times there's a lot of middle ground, but it's usually because the medium of social media tends to make it seem like we're so polarized. And so I just kind of wanted to discuss these things to basically give an opportunity to have a little bit more context and nuance given to some of these questions, discussions, and different social dynamics that we commonly run into. And hopefully we have a really interesting conversation. So Gabby, did you want to get started, or do you want me to get started?
No, but I want to touch about something that you say about
Sure.
that you're being more conservative. And I love this because I come from another side of the spectrum, meaning that I come from a culture that might be our values a little bit more different. And maybe the way that I see things, culturally speaking, I might not see the same way that you see things. So per se, that also impacts a lot in today's topic and try to don't generalize, but also reminding people that whatever we're going to discuss and say is based on our opinions and feedback that we have got from different sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really context dependent as well. Um, let's see. Okay, well, you know what? I think I'll get started then. I think a really good place to launch off here is talking about objectification. So objectification is kind of an interesting one because it's a really nebulous concept, and I think the fact that it is so nebulous makes it really difficult to navigate and have discussions about it, because what exactly is objectification? I mean, people will sit down and they'll be like, oh, well, you're objectifying her, you're turning her into an object. And it's like, okay, but what does that even mean? So like, I can't appreciate someone's looks, appearance. I can't appreciate someone's hard work. You know what I mean? Like if I have a girlfriend, for instance, and this is something that, I know people have been saying lately, you should never compliment a woman on her body because um, then she'll take that as her intrinsic level of value. I've heard people say this, but at the same time, I'm like, any functioning relationship, the guy is he damn well better be complimenting his girlfriend, or they're not going to be boyfriend girlfriend for very fucking long, you know. And so it's like, okay, well, where is that cutoff then? Because I understand what they're saying. Don't reduce women down to a sexual object, but that's not necessarily as simple as it might seem on the surface. And when you get into different scenarios, that's where it becomes a little tricky. And you brought up something really, really important as well, right? Where just before we started recording was the context of, if you're
Yeah.
out on the street and you see a woman and you're like, damn baby, you look so sexy. It's like, okay, well what's the content there? Okay, well, the content is you're complimenting someone, right? And what if you go up to someone, let's say in a bar in another context, and you say, hey, how's it going, how's your night? You kind of start chatting and you're like, wow, you know what, you look absolutely stunning. Or you say something else. Basically, the content of what you're saying is the same, but the delivery and the context is a little bit different. And so it's like, again, now we've added another layer to this conversation where it's like, okay, well, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate? And I think, men and women talk about these things, but really it's very intuitive. And so I don't think there is a clear line or delineation. I think you have good rules of thumb, but I think this is kind of enough to get started on. And why don't you take it from there?
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I actually make a little bit of research about what most data can actually say about all these, because nowadays we see a lot on social media, like girls being like this type of feminist and against boys, and boys saying like, but then how you want us to compliment you, and all these like type of battles that we think that exist through social media. So one of the things that I found is basically the dictionary defines to objectify someone is to look at someone as an object, usually as a sexual one, rather than a fully formed human with opinions, feelings, and sense of humor. Now, my question in here comes like, where is that we're drawing that line between the intention from the action, and it's the fall of social media that the way that we're perceiving these things is based on that we are open a multimedia to the public to be able to come to our space and make us feel in a way that they might don't want us to feel, but that's our perspective, or it is actually a creep that it wants for their own sexual pleasure, make you feel uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I mean, I can't even, so I specifically, as a rule, really avoid difficult conversations via text message, or email or anything like that. Even on the phone, in my opinion, is not great because it's like so much is lost in translation that, I've had people text me and I'm like, yo, what the fuck? Like, this guy's super disrespectful. And then I call him up and I'm like, yo, what the hell? Like, what's going on, man? We gonna have some words. And then he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I was being sarcastic. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then completely, I'm just like, yeah, I'm an idiot. Right. And so a lot of that context is definitely lost. But then at the same time, I mean, creep any girl's page who's got, let's just say hypothetically over 10,000 followers, and you're going to find some creeps there for sure. Like, but it also depends on the content that they're putting out as well. That's going to kind of attract a certain type of person. But yeah, it's that one's kind of interesting. I think I think when it comes to objectification, I personally think that word is more of a barrier than it is
Yeah.
useful. You know, yeah, a lot of the times we have these things like, and I really want to avoid getting political, but I don't necessarily know how to make this statement without, or make this point without getting political, I guess, or
Go
without
for it.
venturing into that realm a little bit. But we see these like trend or buzzwords all the time, like racist, homophobic, prejudice, or all these things that have like a lot of stigma around them. And it's like, in most cases, when I see people, like when I see an incident and then I see people being like, oh, you're this, you're this, you're this, it's like, I don't think he's any of those things. He's just a dick. You know what I mean? Like this guy or this girl or whatever, they're just dicks. That's it. Like they're just rude. They're not racist. They're just assholes. You know what I mean? And like, I guess to kind of make the point a little bit more, it's like when guys, and this is something I think, I don't know if it's more guys that do this or if it's more girls that do that. I don't know. But anyways, it's like, you know, when you're mad at someone and you just say whatever you can that's going to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I kind of see it being a little bit more like that. And if they say something that happens to be maybe prejudiced or homophobic or whatever, or is interpreted that way, I'm I guess I'm very hesitant to kind of label people so quickly. You know what I mean? About certain things. And so I think sometimes like with objectification, like these terms, it's like, you know, guys and girls are being like just labeled, oh, you're doing this or you're doing this. And it's like, I don't know about that, you know?
Well, I think that's something that is in our nature as a human being. Even when we all want to think that we are good and that we are fair with others, we are biased because it really depends of the way that you were raised. What is good for you might not be good for me, or vice versa. So we create bias and then we translate them when we're an adult and we don't realize that the words that we use can have a lot of power. And sometimes we don't actually understand the meaning of what they mean for someone else. That you just say that having conversations via text you try to avoid. Trust me, as someone that just learned English 5 years ago from scratch because I didn't even know the alphabet, to me, I have had social like struggle sometimes to connect with my clients who are Americans because the way that I speak, they might feel that it's too rude. I'm like, no, I just don't know all the keywords that you want me to use. So I stick to my basics and to my present perfect, the things that I know. Because if I try to sound too fancy or use too many words, I'm not fully understanding what I'm saying, and they won't either. So I just try to keep it as simple. And sometimes we just try to sound way ahead of who we really try to be or show to other people in the media than we actually are. And that's a mask that most of people who work through social media sometimes have to put in order for the business to get to the point that they are trying to get it.
You brought up a really, really great point, actually, which is differences in culture and communication styles. So something like, you know, for me as well, um, Canadians generally don't, they're usually pretty passive, you know, for the most part. Whereas like me growing up and you know, like where I came from and how I was raised, we're very direct, and the women are very, very direct as well. So like if a guy, if a woman senses weakness in a guy, like he's not acting like a man, he's not, you know, acting strong, he's not like being a leader, he's not doing what he needs to be doing to hold down the fort, she will come out and call him on it right away. And people are very direct, even like my grandma. So this is a perfect example. My grandma, she's 99, or maybe she just turned 100 actually. And she's this like tiny little old, you know, European woman. And well, she's French, but anyways. And I went over there, maybe this was like a couple of years ago, and I had a girlfriend at the time. And I walk in, she sees me, and at the time I was like 290. So I was a big boy, you know. And she walks in, she like gives me a big hug. She's like, "Oh, Daniel, da da da, how have you been?" Then she sees my tattoos and she sees that I'm big, and she's like, "What happened to you? You look so disgusting." Look, and she starts rubbing my starts rubbing my stomach, and she's like, "What is this belly? You need to lose this weight. Like you're too big. You shouldn't be
You were
this
like,
way."
Grandma,
Like
that's my power belly.
yeah, exactly right. She's like, no one's gonna love you. Like, no woman's gonna like you. And I'm like, this is my girlfriend, like right behind me. You know what I
Oh
mean? And it's
gosh.
like, but the
Yeah.
thing is, like, she did not mean that in a rude way, and I didn't take it in a rude way. That's just a cultural difference. You know, she's just looking out for my health, and she's right to do that based on like our upbringing, right? And so that's something that I tell people here, and they're like, "Oh my God, your grandma's a savage," but that is very, very normal over there because she's just looking out for you. And exactly like what you were saying, you know, like you're seen as direct or sometimes rude, but it's not rude. It's just it's just more direct. It's a different culture, right?
Definitely. And I think you touched in 2 points that I want to bring up, and is about masculinity. I think that people have defined masculinity in such a narrow box. Like most of guys are being raised to fear being afraid. Like they have to be the one who, like, say, who killed the mouse in the house because they are the man of the house, or they are this figure of respect. When in reality, that's more harm than good if you think about it, because then the more manly that the man seems to be, the weaker his ego is, and it's when they go off to do stupid things that they might just regret later on. And the second thing that you touched, and I think it's hilarious, is your grand story. And also, this is going to go back to the interview that you have with Steffi Cohen. Steffi Cohen and I come from the same country, and we are very close in age. But her experience into discovering her femininity and her girliness is very different from mine. From her, she feels that if she was too girly, she won't be taken serious. For me, if I was too sporty or too assertive, I won't be taken serious. So the last time that I went to Venezuela, this was like 3, 4 years ago, my grandma saw me, and my grandma told me, like, what is all those things that you're posting on Facebook, like you picking up weights and like look at your arms? I'm like, well, grandma, that's called powerlifting. And she's like, ah, that sounds like a sport for angry women who cannot find husband. I'm like,
That's that doesn't surprise me at all, like at all.
so to me, I just let it go because I have to pick my battles. I won't want to be like fighting with this old lady who she was raised to be a woman who wanted to get to become a wife.
Yeah.
But in my culture, even like the woman who tried to be too sporty is just not socially accepted. I don't know if you know anything about my country besides our
Yeah, my
crazy
brother is born in
dictatorship.
Venezuela.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
Caracas.
so oh, well, I'm from the mountains, from Media. Anyway, so we are famous for having like beauty pageants, right? Like, the most beautiful woman and all those stereotypes. And that's one of the biggest issues that I have when I moved here, because when I moved here, I wanted to keep doing that, keep looking that way. But at the same time, I wanted to be taken serious as an athlete. I wanted to show that I wasn't scared to sweat. I wanted to show that I wanted to get muscle and like taking serious. But then I was like, but I also want my grandma and my family back at home like me. So to me, it was really hard to let go wearing high heels all the time and getting all this stuff in order to actually focus for what at that moment it is my main priority, that is the fitness and the business. So when Steffi Cohen was telling her story, I'm like, this is so funny because it's the same culture, kind of the same story. She's an immigrant and an immigrant. We both live here. And I started to discover more of my athleticism, like being muscular, enjoy more that part of not being as girly. And it seems that now she's enjoying more that other part that she suppressed for so long. So I just think it's just so interesting. And I would like to know, as a male, what do you think is your perspective with women who either try too much to be too girly at the gym, let's say, to narrow it down the topic, or to try to pretend like the windmill, like no girly at all, but deep inside you know that they are just females, that, there are things that we cannot change biologically as us.
Yeah. This is a tricky one. I want to mention one thing though, and I'd love for you to circle back around to it as well, because you mentioned two things. You're like, okay, Steffi and I come from the same culture, roughly the same age, but have two very, very different experiences, although ultimately the transformation is very similar. How that transformation occurred and where you guys end up are fairly different, right? But at the same time, both of you experience this internalized pressure. And this was something that Steffi said, that she was like, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be a certain way. And then at some point, she's just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do my own thing, right? And so I always wonder how much of this pressure, because there's obviously societal pressure. There obviously is, right? It's undeniable.
Always, yeah.
But I wonder how much of these feelings are us overvaluing that versus, you know, versus other people actually judging. It's almost like, you know, when people come into the gym for the first time and they're like, oh, everyone's watching me. And then after like 2 years, after 2 or 5 years, you're like, oh, no one's watching me because everyone's too insecure
Uh-huh.
that other people are watching them, you know,
Well, they're just doing
or
their own
yeah,
thing.
exactly. Or they're doing their own thing or whatever it is, right? It's like, so the perception of social judgment, a lot of the times it's not, I don't want to say it's not real because it is, but sometimes I think we magnify things,
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, I'll answer your question. I don't want to dodge it. But I would love to hear your feedback on that. Um, I guess afterwards. So your question was, what? Can you repeat that again? Something about women in the gym who dress up or something like
Oh, yeah. Well, let me go back really quick about something that you just mentioned,
that?
and
Sure.
it was the part of that she felt depression, she just let it go. I learned, Daniel, to see it as a toxic relationship in the meaning, like imagine that this that boyfriend that keeps cheating on you and you come going back and forward, or that girlfriend who cheats on you and you come back and forward. And at some point, you just deserve to do better for yourself and love yourself and say, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to break up with this person and let it go. And that's what happened to me with how I wanted to be seen in my family, for my friends back home, to who I wanted to become here. And I think I cannot speak for Steffi Cohen, but I feel that that's something that she might relate to, that she just decided to break apart from those feelings and double down on herself and do whatever she wanted.
Yeah, yeah. There's a really high degree of like autonomy and just self-awareness that I think has to come with that, because if you're not really sure in who you are, then everyone and everyone's opinion is going to just pull you in every which way basically. And so it can become very difficult. Like you really have to be resolute and like, this is who I am, this is what I represent, these are what my values are. And if other people don't like it, yeah, sometimes that hurts, sometimes their judgments hurt, sometimes they dig, but at the end of the day, you know, like you got to do you. So I totally agree with that.
So back to my
Okay.
question, it was like
Yeah,
when you
yeah, yeah.
see these females, um, okay, I don't want to judge, but I want to cut the chase and go straight to it. Like these classic females who go to the gym, wear like two super cute outfits, like everything is super known. They only use certain ways, they act certain way as well, like having off like the booty workout and the Gene Shark, I think that's the brand. And then you see the other
Yeah.
perspective that is the female with the basketball like shorts, and she's like, "What's up, bro?" And like, it's just like, what is your perspective as someone, forgetting that you have athletes and like you don't want to sound biased towards anybody, that you see when you are there sitting on your bench, minding your business, and you see this type of perspective on females? Do you think that they're trying too hard, or do you think they should like like ease?
I personally don't. I don't really think anything of it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think, yeah, like I think that pretty much if a girl wants to behave or do whatever she wants, like I am very, very libertarian, you know. So if you want to go out and, you know, wear literally just tassels on your chest and go around clubbing, I don't care. You know, go and do whatever you want so long as you're not hurting anyone else. So like I think, you know, if you're a chick and you want to go and work out in basketball shorts or this or that, I don't think it really matters. And there's definitely, like, I've definitely known women who have different personality types. Some women are like much more tomboyish, much more sporty. Other women are like very, very feminine. And yeah, I genuinely don't think much about that. I think the conversation sometimes between guys about something similar is usually like about women who complain about getting looked at, like getting stared at or something like that at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I hear a lot from women and from men, right? Where people like, guys are staring at me at the gym and I don't like it, and da 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 da. So that is something that I guess I will speak on because I do have an opinion on that. On the one hand, like people have autonomy. Men and women have autonomy in Canada and the US and things like that, right? So, wear whatever you want. But there is also a burden that comes with autonomy, right?
Yeah.
So if you have your own business, you make more money. You call your own shots, you make your own schedule. However, you're also responsible for getting clients, for generating revenue, for perpetuating your business forward, right? So there's always a trade-off there. There's always a cost and a benefit. And I think, if women want to go and wear whatever they want, again, wear whatever the fuck you want. Like, go for it. All the power to you. The only thing that sometimes I don't understand is I don't understand when people pretend like they're surprised that men are looking at them. It's like I've seen women wearing, like, those gym outfits where it's like that's less of a gym outfit and more of like a salsa dancing, you know what I mean? Like bra and
Listen,
this
Daniel,
and that.
yes, I get it because I have three
Yeah.
outfits. I have a cat slut woman that is my slutty outfit. I have a tomboy homeless, and I have a grandma who goes to Walmart. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm that Latin dancing, and sometimes I'm
Yeah.
just a homeless. But
Yeah.
yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. So like I've seen some pretty elaborate outfits. Like I've seen girls going in with like literally half their ass hanging out and like doing really deep deficit RDLs in front of people. And it's like, go for it. I don't care. There's no problem there. But if you think that you're going to do that and then not attract attention, I think that's intellectually dishonest. It's like, look at someone like me. This is a prime example. I'm I'm 280. I have all these tattoos on like my neck, my hands, my arms. When I'm walking down the street, every single time I go out, every single time I go out with friends, at least three guys will come up and try and like start something with me. Every single time. Because they're using me as their measuring stick. Right. So it's like, is that fair? Is it justified? Well, no, like I don't want people to aggravate me. I don't want people to start fights with me. I don't want any trouble. I just want to go out and hang out with my friends. So is it fair that these guys are doing this? No, it's not. But at the same time, I chose to be big. I chose to get tattoos. So I can't exactly be angry when guys try and start stuff with me. You know what I mean? It's like that's part of what it is, right? And then additionally, like if I'm walking down the street, even during the daytime sometimes, women will literally cross the street, walk past me and cross back. And I don't mind because again, if it's at nighttime, that's the right thing. Like if a woman doesn't know me and they see someone like me, I agree with that. So I'm not offended by that because I'm like, I look intimidating. I'm a big dude. I understand that. And so sometimes I just think that, like, for me anyways, I struggle to understand when people are like, oh, well, I should be able to go out and wear whatever I want and not have anyone comment. I'm like, yes, you should. But people are not always going to be on that level. So I guess I just think that like you can do whatever you want, but I don't understand the surprise of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, well, of course it's happening. You know what I mean? Not saying it's justified, not saying it's right. I'm just saying I don't understand when people act surprised by it.
I understand your point because now I can hear from a male perspective that I have never heard it. I'm going to tell you for a woman perspective, especially from my personal opinion. I am a female, as I told you. I have three types of outfits: my slutty, my homeless, and my grandma. Uh,
I love the classification.
yeah, and I do sometimes, even when it's outside the gym or in, like other places at the gym, I feel seen because I have big breasts. I pick to have to big breasts. And sometimes I do wear cleavage. This doesn't mean that I want people to think that I'm a hooker because I'm Latin, I'm brunette, and I have big breasts. But that's a stereotype that it does happen. So what it sounds to happen right now and what you say is that we went a little bit from the I don't understand why people get so assumed, like amazed, but with someone wears these type of things or do this type of exercise in front of them to one stereotype. I do feel that you as a female have the responsibility to know that naturally straight men and even women are going to be looking at you if you are doing certain moves in social little clothes because we are sexual beings. Like that's how we keep life. Like we need to reproduce and we think about sex and we have made it a taboo. But at the same time, it does feel awkward when you do feel people staring at you or objectifying or stereotyping just for how you look, just because you decide to get tattoos and you are big. Maybe you're just a golfer who likes tattoo and have Spanish like too often, so you're just big because of that. Maybe I am a hooker, or maybe I just decide to look this way because it's how I like me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, like I'm not, justifying any sort of behavior, right? Like I said, I am very libertarian. If girls want to go to the gym in like literally just one of those Borat outfits where he has the thong that goes over his shoulders, go for it. Like that doesn't bother me at all. I probably will stop and stare for a bit because I'm going to be like, what the fuck am I looking at? But I'm going to be training. So to be honest, like at my club, we have I train at a private club. So
Mm-hmm.
all the people there are quite serious. All the women there are also quite serious. They're very strong. They're really good athletes. So that's the whole discussion that you're talking about is pretty far removed from my day-to-day experience. So we don't really have that sort of stuff happen at my gym, at least not to my knowledge, anyways. Right. Um, so I think, yeah, I think people can wear whatever they want, and that's the thing. Like, it is really tricky because at the same time, like, I do remember when I first went into the gym. Like, I actually genuinely do remember it. I was skinny as hell. I was 165 pounds. I was weaker than the women. I was incredibly insecure, and all I felt was that everyone was looking at me and judging me. And admittedly, looking back, that's a lot of my own insecurities that I was just kind of projecting on other people. But part of it was probably true. You know, people probably were staring. People probably were judging, and I would imagine that for women, a lot of that is the same, right? Where you go in and guys will stare and it makes you uncomfortable. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a solution for that. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know.
No, and I don't feel we are never gonna create a solution because it's something that comes from many years, even before we were born. It's just the way that the game is. So you usually shouldn't be hating the player; you should hate the game, right? But something that I wanted to touch on that I got a lot of questions or answers on my social media was about men feeling intimidated by women who take their sponsorship because of the way that women look and not for their achievements. Like apparently, and I didn't know that, is there's a jealousy between men in certain sports that don't feel that women are deserved of a sponsorship because the women are just marketing themselves for their body and not for their skills when men have like let's say reached a pro level.
um, yeah, so I do know what you mean. Um, and I'll be honest, like when I was probably in my early 20s, I used to get annoyed by that as well. I'd be like, oh, this girl doesn't have any value. She's just hot, blah, blah, blah. And like, she's just getting away on her looks. And now looking back, I think that that's just incredibly insecure kind of perspective, you know, like let's say hypothetically, this woman, not a good athlete at all. This hypothetical woman, she's not a good athlete at all, but she's very attractive, right? And she gets a lot of eyeballs on the sport or on the brand that's sponsoring her or whatever. So, you know what I mean? Like she has a strength and she's using her strength to her advantage. Why would you not use your strength to your advantage? Right? It's like, why would I not use a weightlifting belt when I'm squatting and deadlifting if it's available to me? If this woman has zero talents and only has her looks, well, why would she not make use of her only talent to get sponsorships to get ahead in life. Now, let's say she's got tons of talents. Let's say she's a fantastic lifter, she's attractive, she's this, she's that. And, like, again, I don't see a problem with that. So I think guys who are like, anyone who's comparing and they're like, oh, she doesn't deserve the sponsorship, I do. Whether they're talking about a woman or a guy or anything, I think that comes from a place of scarcity and insecurity, where it's like, well, why do you deserve it over them? Especially if you don't even know them. Like, maybe they have a really good relationship with the brand. Maybe they cultivated that over several years, and the brand's like, hey, you know what? I really like what you're about. I like how you're spreading this message. You know what I mean? So whenever I see stuff like that, I honestly think that like, I think that the haters are just fucking haters. You know what I mean? Like, they're just jealous, and it is what it is. So I I personally haven't ever heard of that for sponsors. That conversation mostly comes up when it's things like OnlyFans, you know what I mean? Where you get
Uh,
some random girl, making, like, hundreds of thousands, or even sometimes maybe million. I don't know how much OnlyFans makes, but I'm assuming you can make like hundreds of thousands a year. Because I do know one person who does that. She makes a lot of money, and so I know that some guys are pissed off about that. But again, even though I don't agree with those judgments, like with those things moralistically, like they're against my values, it's not my life. So do whatever the fuck you want. They're not hurting anyone. And if they have a sponsorship or an OnlyFans or whatever, let them fucking do it. Because I think most guys would do the exact same thing if they were in the same position. It's just they don't have it.
are
You
you
know?
familiar with the experiment called Hating Howard that was made in the School of Business in Columbus University?
Hating Howard?
Yes. So
No,
briefly,
I don't think so.
this will come to your point. Let me explain you. My ADHD made me run like in little circles, but I will go back to the point. So Henry Howard was an experiment where a business professor took the same studies, so a male and a female, and he said, "This is Haiti, this is Howard. They are both have the same like PhD, the same type of resume, right?
Yeah.
So half of the students
Yeah.
has to pick who they like more and that is like better, even when everybody agrees that both were completely like willing to take the job or they were in the same line like intellectually, they like Howard more just because there's a natural tendency that humans, including male and female, like males more because the woman who looks assertive, the woman who goes like this, the go-getter, seems to be a little bit over herself too much. And my point with coming with this is because I have heard from males that are elite power lifters or whatever that they have asked me, why do you work with this brand when you're still a newbie? Or what do you work with this brand if you da? So it's just like, no, it's not because you don't deserve it. Maybe it's that you think that for who you are or for what you have, you should be entitled to people like come to you to offer you those things. On my end, I go and ask for what I want, and that doesn't seem to be fair for the people who doesn't know me. They think the brands are using me for how I look, and not because I went and get it. And for this other part of the spectrum, it's like, but I am a pro. I can do this, and like this years of experiences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And again, like, people are never going to have perfect information, right? Like, they're never going to know your situation or what happened. Like, an Instagram is completely choreographed. It's 100% choreographed. So you're only ever going to see, oh, Gabby's got this perfect life and she's got sponsors and da 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 and whatever. And it's like, again, I just think that that comes from a place of scarcity, right? Like, scarcity and insecurity, because it's like, a lot of the times people compare these situations to a zero sum game, right? Where if Gabby has a sponsorship, that means I don't. And it's like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, if you want to get sponsored, go out and talk to a million sponsors, you know? Like, you'll get someone sponsoring you. I mean, like, I get at least a couple messages every week from like stupid clothing lines being like, "Oh my God, we love your brand. You want to rep our stuff?" And it's like, it's probably bullshit. But at the end of the day, like you can get someone like that, or you can just contact bigger brand names. And it's like, I don't think. Plus, even if it's the same organization, like let's say SBD, I don't know who you're sponsored by, but let's say you're sponsored by SBD. SBD sponsors a lot of people. Why couldn't they
Yeah.
just reach out and be like, "Hey, I'd love to rep your brand. Like, are you looking for athletes to sponsor or something like that?" I mean, I think that just comes from a place of insecurity. I don't know that that's a male female thing. I think that that's just an insecurity thing.
Well, let's not forget that there's a difference between being a sponsor, being an ambassador. That's what most of the people also confuse the term. That's why what we said in the beginning, words have social power, and not everybody knows the meaning of those words. So they think that a sponsor might be the same as an ambassador, and an ambassador, you're just another seller for the company and you're getting freebies. A
Yeah.
sponsor is that you're getting paid by the brand just for do your thing. So, people tend to confuse that. Do you have any questions about the topic that we're talking that you got from Instagram that you would like to discuss?
Yeah, I got a bunch of questions actually that I was asked. So, let's see.
Let's make this interesting. Pick like the spiciest one.
The spiciest one.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's pretty controversial. Are men intimidated by assertive women? I'm gonna say no, but I'm gonna put a caveat on this. So, um, I think that there are lots of insecure men, and I think that there are lots of insecure women. But I don't necessarily think in the same way that you wouldn't categorize a healthy individual from research, the same way you would categorize an obese individual during research. Like doing studies, you can't necessarily relate those two outcomes, right? Because they're different demographics. So in the same way, I would have to separate men who I would let's just broadly call them insecure and women who are broadly insecure, whatever. I don't think any guy who's, sure in himself is intimidated by a confident woman. And I've heard this a lot, where women will be like, "Oh, well, I can't approach a guy at a bar because men don't like confident women." That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Any guy who's like sitting there and has a woman approaching him, he's now like, "Oh my God, I feel like a freaking king." Seriously,
I can
seriously.
see that.
Right? And so it's like the only time a guy's going to turn a girl down in that instance is A, if he has a girlfriend or he's married, or B, if he's not interested in her, but has nothing to do with the confidence. And I've heard this said a lot, and I don't buy it and I don't see it. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but I think in those instances, if a guy is intimidated by a confident and assertive woman, I would really question his own value as an individual. I would question his values. I would question his level of like, um, whether or not he actually knows who he is as an individual. If he owns who he is, if he owns his masculinity. Like, I can't see any of my friends, and obviously this is again very biased because the particular type of individual I hang out with just would never behave in that way. So I don't see it, but I'm sure that it exists on some level. I've never seen that. So I would
Well,
really be interested in hearing your thoughts though, because I hear this all the time.
no, definitely. Do you remember in the beginning of our conversation that I said that the more manly that the man is, the weaker his ego seems to be?
Yes.
I mentioned this because when I started powerlifting, I used to have a bodybuilding boyfriend that he broke up with me because he saw me sniffing ammonia, slamming my hands, like my thighs, and like being me, about to make a PR. And he said, like, this is literally too much. You're becoming another person, and I cannot handle it. To me, Daniel, I
That's why
cried
you
like
broke
for
up?
yes, like literally, he told me in
Oh,
my face after we left the gym. He said like, we need
that's
to
so
talk, and
shallow.
I'm like, I know where this is coming from. And he's like, you have changed so much. I understand that this is your passion, but I don't feel like we're a good fit anymore. You're acting like a different person, especially when you're at the gym. I think this is just for you to call attention, and it's just too much, and I don't feel comfortable with this. So in here, what is where it goes apart. at that point, when I still at the beginning, I was deadlifting more than he was doing. People, at least that's how I felt, they were like, oh wow, that little girl, 130 pounds, is like doing good for himself. And he was next to me doing the same way. So at the same time, I feel it was more his ego that was like hurt than I don't know, the reality of the situation. And I feel that if a man gets intimidated by a confident woman, is on them for not having the tools, of not having raised with the tools, that they don't need to be always the alpha, and that is okay.
Yeah. So I would actually push back against that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it sucks that happened,
Oh
but
no, I'll
now
find someone better
to
now.
another guy who seems to be a great person, right? Um, so I would definitely push back against that. I agree with everything you're saying. The only thing that I would say, though, to differentiate that is I would not call that guy masculine, right? Because there's a big difference, and this actually is perfect because one of the questions that I got was about toxic masculinity, and this is a word or a phrase that I absolutely detest because it's basically just taking a bunch of characteristics that have nothing to do with being a man and just pretending that it has anything to do with masculinity. So some of the things that I've heard just off the top of my head about toxic masculinity, um, uh, like rudeness, right? Like insecurity about women's power, right? Having to dominate, um, like hyper aggression, just a bunch of
Yes.
things that are just negative, right? And it's like that is not what being a man is about, right? So for instance,
How
like
would you
sometimes,
define being a man?
sure. So I'm gonna get to that, right? Like when there are times where like I'll be talking to my friends and they'll be like, "Yo, like they're not behaving properly," so I'm like, "Yo, man the fuck up," right? And that expression is also really controversial sometimes, and it's like that has nothing to do with women. That has everything to do with, hey, you're not acting like a man, you're acting like a boy, like a child. You need to step into your manhood and actually behave appropriately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's more of a call to action, getting them to rise to the occasion than it is about disparaging women. It has nothing to do with women. It's kind of the same thing like saying, hey, woman up, or calling, what is the new trend? It's like calling people
Empower.
queens, like, hey, queens, hey, kings, you know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing. Well, I think anyways, I've only kind of heard these things in passing, but when it comes to like being a man, it is not about dominating anyone else. Like if you were to meet all of my very closest friends, all of them very assertive, very successful, very good with women, smart, funny, super loyal, like always show up, always have your back. They're men of their word. They always keep their word. If they say they're going to do something, they do it. You know what I mean? They're reliable. They have all these really, really great qualities. And we'll all be hanging out, and you'll never be able to point to one of us and be like, "Oh, this guy's the leader of the group." And it's like, why is that? Right? Because none of us are trying to dominate anyone else. We're just doing our own things, Like some of my best homies, like we'll just be hanging out. And it's like he's doing his own thing, and that's fine. I'm not trying to lead him. I'm not trying to be better than him. We're not trying to one up each other. It's not like that. If anything, it's kind of the opposite where we're always trying to help build each other up. Right. So a perfect example of this is like one of my buddies, um, gosh, this was a couple of years ago. We were just like chilling, watching Netflix, and I had told him previously that I was insecure about my teeth because I've got a crooked tooth on my right side, right? And yeah, exactly. And I said I was like insecure about it. I didn't like smiling in photos. I would never do like an open mouth smile. And even like if I was talking to women, I told him, I was like, yeah, like I'm kind of embarrassed about it. And it was something that I was genuinely insecure about. Right. And I was in like my mid 20s at the time. And I remember he was like, okay. And so we're just like sitting down watching Netflix one day. And we hadn't said a word to each other in like 30 minutes. And then out of nowhere, he just turns to me and he's like, he hits pause and he's like, yo, your teeth are really fucked up. You should do something about it. And I was like, what? And so I got really pissed off at first. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? Like, don't be disrespecting me like that. But then he called me out. He was like, well, dude, here's the thing. He's like, you're insecure about it, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, so be a fucking man. Either own it or do something about it. But don't just sit here and complain about your situation. And I couldn't say anything, right? I was like, you're right, that's it. And I don't want to get braces because, you know, I'm 32 now, so I'm like, fuck it, I'm not gonna go through the process of getting braces and have to do all the nonsense. So I just owned it, right? And he cared more about me becoming a better person and getting over that obstacle than he did about upsetting me. Like he put me before, you know, him, before me liking him or before my feelings. You know what I mean? And it's like that's a good friend, and that's what I like when I think of masculinity. That's what I think of. It's like people supporting each other, people pushing you to become better, people, you know, being providers, protectors. And these are not, when I say that's what being a man is, a lot of those qualities are also feminine. You know what I mean? Like women also do that. They just do it in their own way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I don't think that those qualities are exclusively male. But when I think about masculinity, that's what I think about, you know, and like you know, if I'm at a restaurant or something like that, you will never ever hear me be rude to any server, right? I will always say please, I will always say thank you, I will always say yes, ma'am. I always, 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 always will say that. And like I will always hold the door open. If someone drops their coat, I will always get up out of my table, go pick it up and give it to them. And it's like, in my opinion, that's what being a man is about. Being a man is not pretending to be this thing that you're
Okay.
not, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you're, so for me, I am an aggressive person, right? I do enjoy fighting. I'm very assertive, I'm very direct. That's who I genuinely am. That's not a game, that's not someone I pretend to be. And so owning who that is, that's being masculine. Whereas the next guy might not be. He might not be super aggressive. He might just be super, super chill. He might be, you know, just like really into meditation and music and art and whatever. And even though those aren't traditionally seen as masculine, if he owns that and he owns who he is, that's confidence, that's masculinity, right? So it's more the essence of what drives your behaviors and what drives your I guess what motivates you than it is the actual behaviors themselves. Like you don't need to be this big fucking machismo guy. You know, like I happen to be a big guy, I happen to be a good fighter, I happen to be a strong guy. But before that, I was also a yoga instructor. I would meditate for 2 hours a day. I would read spirituality books. Like, so I've been a different person across the lifespan. And at all of those times, you could say that I was masculine, right? Does that kind of make
Yeah.
sense?
No, definitely. And it's so nice to know the things about you. I feel that you have a wide like idea of what the masculine thing is, but I also believe that if we keep getting those questions, because I also got it from females and from male in my social media, it's more like the exception but not the rule. Because if the topic is still on, it means that it's still happening and might be not in our circle locally, but it's still happening a lot. That there's still like who is the alpha, how we have to act, or where we should be, or even if you want to see outside of what is fitness on an instrument in the corporation, or look at how many females are presidents, or whole idea of jobs and men with the men. This is not about the gender that I'm talking about, but what I mean is like the masculinity of like is the man who tries to be on top, is the man who tries to be one more status higher, is the man who has to do it because he's the alpha, he's the one who is supposed to do it. And this is still happening. So might not be in your circle, but I keep hearing it and getting questions and answers a lot about this topic. Like masculine means to is supposed to do and be this, but it also masculine should be also this. So there's no like a right or wrong answer. I think it really depends as well as your own values.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always going to be a bastardization of some of these concepts, right? Like, um, I think that like, you know, you're going to get different representations of that. So regardless of where you are, whether it's in a corporation or anything like that, you know, that's my definition of masculinity. So I guess one of the ways that I put this is, imagine you're on a date and the guy starts talking about, oh yeah, by the way, like I'm a lawyer and I make this much money and I know these people, I've got 50,000 followers, right? He's trying to assert himself as a quote unquote alpha, right? But
Mm-hmm.
anyone who's legitimately an alpha, like first of all, I hate using that word because it's just so ridiculous, right? But anyone who's actually confident and solid in themselves would never behave like that and would never call themselves an alpha. The only people that I see calling themselves an alpha or being like, I'm a strong, confident man and like I'm a this and I'm a that, or women who do that, I don't see that as confidence. I see that as like someone who's trying to trick themselves into believing it. You know what I mean? It's like, who are you trying to prove this to? You know, like, I don't think confidence is something you have to tell people. It's just something you either exude or you don't. Like, people just, you know what I mean? Like, you walk into a room and people just know. They're like, oh shit, this dude or this girl is confident. Period. She didn't say
Yeah,
anything. It's just how she carries herself, right? And so,
that's right.
but then at the same time, obviously, you get men and women who kind of like the ex boyfriend. Well, actually, I don't want to pick on him, but let's just say
Oh, pick on him,
someone
it's
else,
fine.
right? Where it's like, you know, he's like intimidated by you lifting. It's like, what kind of a man would be intimidated by that? Like, I, at least from my perspective, right? I would see that and I'd be like, holy fuck, how lucky am I that I have this little rocket who's like strong, she's ambitious, she's going after her goals, she's got a business, she's doing all of these really awesome things. Like, fuck yeah, I'm totally behind that. I want to help you get to that next level. And that has nothing to do with me. It's just like, you know, like, you're a dope person and we're dating. I want to support that, right? And that has nothing to do with me. So it's like, I see departures from that, and again, this is where I become like very conservative, where it's like, I do think that men and women have a role in their relationship, and I think a big role is like, you got to support each other, right? Um, yeah, but I think that's enough about that. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of mention?
About masculinity?
I don't know. I feel like this has just been more of kind of an open-ended conversation than like a point-by-point discussion.
Yeah, no. No, I know. I think this has been great, honestly. Uh, I just feel that at the end of the day, have a lot to be well with our own insecurities, but the way that we have been raised and the way that we can do better to raise future generations, in the meaning that it's just not pushing certain ideologies or just expectations for the type of gender that you are. It's more just like open up the doors for everybody to figure out who they are and be okay with that.
Yeah, and you know, unfortunately, like, I agree with everything that you're saying. I agree that people should cultivate like a good environment, but at the same time, I also genuinely believe like, uh, that iron sharpens iron, you know, and difficult situations make tough people, and you know, I think the expectation of the world to be an inviting place is really a dangerous notion because it sets you up for failure. Whereas if you were just like, you know what, the world is a dangerous place, so I got to make myself strong enough to be able to go out into it, you know, and that comes from like, you don't need to ask permission to be who you are. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a girl and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should wear this outfit because I'm not sure if guys are going to stare at me, you know what? Like, and again, this is my opinion. I don't want to tell people what to do, but it's like, you know what? If you want to wear it and the thing that's stopping you is insecurity, fucking wear it, own it. You know, like, when I was younger, I was like, when we moved to Canada, we didn't ever have chocolate, TV, chip. Like, we didn't even know what these things were, just because of how we were raised was very, very different. Um, and so I started, like, I had friends and they started giving me all this like sweet stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I became a skinny fat kid. Right. And so
Oh,
I was really embarrassed about my physique and I was really ashamed of it. And I remember talking to my brother, and my older brother said the same thing. He's like, dude, just fucking own it. He's like, you want to get over it? Just take your shirt off. And I was like, oh shit, you're right. So for like a year and a half, everywhere that I went, I did not have a shirt on. Every single place that I went. And after about a couple months, I quickly got over that. I was so uncomfortable during those couple of months, but I got over it, you know,
well,
because
because you learn how to feel comfortable being uncomfortable.
exactly, right? Because I after a while, I was just like, I don't fucking care anymore. Like, it wasn't that I became comfortable. Exactly like you said, it was just, I did it enough that I was just like, I just don't care anymore. You know, it wasn't that I all of a sudden loved my body, because I didn't, right? but it wasn't stopping me from doing anything. And I think that's a big distinction, right? Is like, I look at the people who are successful, the people who are, like have great relationships and all this. It's like, I don't think that they don't experience fear, and I don't think that people with awesome relationships don't experience difficulty. I just think that they're more willing to push through those things to get to the good stuff. You know, um, let's see. One of the things. Let me see. One of the questions that I got here. Um,
Do you think that pushing that self love about like owning however you look and however you are is also pushing unhealthy behaviors in the meaning that right now in the media it's more like love your body no matter how much you weigh, who you like, you those type of things that we see a lot in male and female, but at the same time like love your body, show up, you do you, but are you pushing self love or are you pushing being unhealthy? Because then you're giving an excuse to someone to go off their way every single day and, I don't know, eat junk food or drink alcohol or just don't respect their own image in order to you do you. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think it's a bit of both, right? Like, because there's always going to be opportunists, so like with the whole healthy at every size thing, I think the idea of promoting, self-acceptance and, you know, I guess to take a step back, I think there's a big difference between self-love and self-acceptance. You don't have to necessarily love yourself to accept yourself, right? Like I right now, I don't love my physique, right? Like I'm working with a coach. I've been working with him for about 12 weeks now. I've been getting like way leaner. And the next like 5 months, I should be at around like 10, 11% body fat, which at my body weight will make me pretty fucking shredded. Right. And at that point, I will love my body. Right now, I do not love my body, but I also don't like, I still accept myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I, I, I don't love where I'm at right now in my career, but I'm happy with it. And I see where I'm going. You know what I mean? And so I think it's kind of the same thing when it comes to body images. You can accept yourself without being complacent. Um, and I think that there's a lot of danger in the messages, right? So like the classification of obesity as a disease, I think that's a big fucking problem. I think it's a
It
big
is.
problem because people don't understand the clinical significance of that term, and they're just using they think that it's like something that you catch, you know but they don't understand what it means in clinical terms. So I think that's a very dangerous classification, because now people are like, oh, I have a disease, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, you didn't catch obesity. You didn't catch, like, it's not like cancer. You know what I mean? And so I think that that's dangerous. And I think there's opportunists that are always going to utilize that as an excuse. But if it wasn't body positivity, it would be, oh, I'm fat because of my genetics. If it wasn't that, it's going to be something else. So it doesn't really matter what it is. They're going to use something to come up for justifications for why they can't, look and feel the way they want to. Whether it's like blaming men, whether it's blaming women and their unrealistic beauty standards, whether it's blaming social media or genetics or, obesity being a disease. I think those people are always going to exist. And I think they're much fewer than people like to believe. But unfortunately, with social media, I think there's a very small subset of like individuals who just are really shitty people who make the most noise. And so if you're on social media, I think it appears like they're the majority. And I think it appears that that's the way that it's going. But if you just deleted your Instagram account, like, I think most of these problems and controversies you wouldn't even really know existed. You know,
Yeah.
like the rift between men and or the rift, sorry, between men and women. I don't think you'd really see it the same way. The whole body acceptance, I don't think you'd see it the same way. And like, even just speaking for myself too, right? Like, it's at a point where it's so wildly inappropriate to comment on someone who's fat, you know, like to anyone, not to mention in a gym, right? Like the number of times I've called people out like really aggressively for saying some shit behind someone else's back, like it's only been about 3 times. You know what I mean? But I in my opinion, people don't really put up with that. That's my opinion, right? Now, like, don't get me wrong. If I'm talking about a friend, I'm calling that dude a fat fuck. I'm saying whatever mean shit I can just to get under their skin because we're friends. You know what I mean? But it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with their actual body image. You know what I mean? It's just the fact that friends are dicks to each other, or at least guys are. And so, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think I'm kind of ranting now. So I'm going to stop and turn it over to you. And I'd like to hear your kind of perspective on that.
Well, and I'm a nutrition coach, so of course I will always try to do the best of my abilities to show other people that they should love first their body for what it can do, and because it's also the only place they have to live, than just for the number in the scale, let's say. But yeah, there's a point where being a certain way can be unhealthy, and it's just not only going to affect you, it's also going to affect your family because then they get worried, they get monetary finances from. So everything can, it goes along in one thing. So these that you just mentioned makes me feel if it's sometimes because of social media, because it would be a perfect world if you would say like, yeah, most of the people are not on social media, or yeah, like you can just go ahead and delete your Instagram. But most of the people that right now probably listen to this, they do it because they found you on social media. And I don't know about you, but at least I could say that 80% of my environment is based on social media because that's after COVID how most of my friends and family started to work and interact with each other. So
Oh,
right now we
100%.
can
Yeah.
like just forget that social media is a problem. Say let's just delete it because not everybody's gonna have that luxury because now they either work for it or it's their way to still connect it to people who have moved to other parts of the world and they want to keep along. But it is social media, a wide open thing that we have just put out there and like pull ourselves out, just like, okay, here's me, go ahead, either destroy me or maybe I'm just being hypocritical on my social media saying that I love my body, but deep inside when I'm at home alone and I look at the mirror, I don't like it, but because I'm project this on my social media, I have to like pretend and put this mask and then I take it off at night.
Yeah. So just to be clear, like I'm not recommending people delete social media. I think that generally to function in society, it's a really valuable tool. It was more so just like to kind of create a perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying, and I agree with that. I mean, there's definitely a pressure to appear a certain way, and honestly, admittedly, like people always call me out for being, oh man, you're so aggressive, you're so direct, and like you're so harsh sometimes. But and like I've had a lot of people be like, man, you don't give a fuck about what other people think about you. However, I definitely know that in the past I have censored myself on social media because I was concerned about how other people would perceive it, especially because I am very conservative. And right now, like a lot of my views are not very popular, right? And so I don't have my business page to like piss people off or to fuck with people, but at the same time, like I do believe these things. And so it's always kind of been this a bit of an internal struggle to be like, okay, how authentic should I be? And and I mean, only recently have I started talking about my actual life a little bit more because I've kind of been prompted to by other people and friends and stuff like that. So I've shared a little bit about like what's going on in my life and stuff, but previously it was like mostly content. But I've definitely struggled with that, and even for someone like I generally am someone who doesn't really give a shit about what other people think about them, and so if I feel that pressure, I can only imagine what other people who are more um, agreeable maybe feel, right? So I can definitely see that as an obstacle for sure.
And I think
um
there's a difference, Daniel, between don't giving a shit what other people think, but also wanting to fit in a meaning that at the end of the day, we are based on connections, that's how it made us humans as well. So there's a degree where we want to be likable and we want to be accepted, even if it does separate us from different tribes. And I think that's why you have your tribe and you have your community and everybody supports you and respects who you are and you feel good because that's how you want to look and that's the type of environment that you should live in. But then if you would maybe take like this athlete that just pulled out of the Olympics, Simone Biles, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
She's such an example, but at the same time, there's such a controversy that she just left her team, but at the same time, it's like she was looking out of herself. So will she have to decide between being likable or decide about like her own self? It's just it's an interesting topic. Like I wish we have all the answers and the time to talk about it because there's so much to be said, but so little solution.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I guess I don't know that there is a solution. I mean, we kind of chatted about this before we even started recording, right? Like, there's not really a solution to any of these things. It's just a matter of, I think, broadening your horizon and kind of understanding the different perspectives. So you can kind of be like, oh, okay, like I can understand why women feel creeped out by dudes at the gym, or, oh, okay, I understand that, So for instance, like, actually, this is a great example. I know there was an incident where someone basically posted on their Instagram story like, "Hey, what are some things that annoy you about the training at the gym or something like that?" Right? And a bunch of people started posting, and right when I saw that, I was like, "This is going to be a problem because there's a lot of problems that people have in their head that most other people don't know about, and now it's going to polarize people." And one of the things that I saw was like, oh, guys staring at or guys not keeping eyes on themselves or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it basically was like guys staring at girls, right? And it was funny because at this particular place, everyone's an athlete. So like if I'm for me anyways, just speaking for myself, like if I'm looking at a girl, it's because she's fucking strong and she's doing like a log press with like 200 pounds. And I'm like, holy shit, this girl's basically stronger than me, like it's really impressive. So it's like it's a funny thing because like on the one hand someone would be like, oh god, these guys are staring at me, but it's like, yeah, but you're also doing something really impressive, right? So why
Hey,
are they
that
staring
happened
at you,
with females too. Like
yeah,
females also look at other females, and I think we like to forget about that fact, and that's something that I wanted to touch on here about like the objectification and women in the fitness industry don't come only from the male perspective; it comes from also the female perspective. There's also female toxicity inside the gene and outside, and I don't feel that we talk a lot about it because right now the trend is like this empowerment female type of things, which I'm all aboard, but I also don't want to forget about the facts and that sometimes are more of the females looking at other females than the males.
yeah. Actually, so I saw a meme, someone sent me a meme a little while ago, and for me anyways, this really really resonated because I've had experiences like this before and a lot of guys have. So um, basically this meme is like there's like an objectively beautiful woman laying at the beach, right, in a bikini. One woman walks by, and it's kind of like stereotyping a little bit. One woman walks by who's like tattooed up, her hair's dyed in a rainbow, and she's like, "Oh God, look at that girl who's just completely promoting, societal standards of beauty, right?" She keeps walking. Another girl, she's, very heavy and overweight. She looks over and she's like, "Oh my God, like what an unrealistic body image to promote. Oh, I can't believe this girl's disgusting." She walks by. And then someone else walks by and same thing, another, has another criticism for her. And then a man walks by and looks and he's like, "Oh, wow, that girl's beautiful." And then all of these women come back in and they're like, "How dare you say that? She's not doing it for you. She's beautiful. She doesn't need you to, or she doesn't need to justify herself to you." And I was like, damn, like that hits home because I have seen that happen so freaking often where like
Yeah.
I've seen women outright like been a part of it where I'm like, I'm hearing women outright criticizing this one person. And then the moment that a guy says anything, it's like, "You piece of shit." It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, talk about the pot calling the kettle black, right?
Yeah.
So I don't
Uh,
know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I have seen that happen to me even in my own circle with friends that they can see someone else and make a comment. But then if it's a male who make it, they're all, okay, queen, we got you. Like, especially like at bars, like, you do too, girl, go.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, but like 3 minutes ago, you were saying that Karen was flawed. Like, why are you being fake? So it's just like, it's very hard sometimes because I feel that women sometimes are being raised to be competitive, which I think it could be a good thing if it was more for another perspective that it wasn't from the attention of to attract the male. So we see that a lot that if he is the woman who is being criticized by the man, we all go for it and she's our sister and empowerment. But then if he is another female to another female, we just pick sides to which side of and with who woman we are like agree with. And that's really hard sometimes to be in the media and try to keep it in neutral and be just Switzerland, you know? It's just like sometimes you just have to believe with the controversy and let it go.
Yeah, it's kind of like that movie Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was kind of an interesting one because I don't know. When I saw that, like when someone sent me that meme, I was like, okay, that does hit home for me. Like I've been in situations where something like that happened and I was criticized and I'm like, what are you like what? You know?
You know
I was
what
just kind of
happened
caught
to
out of
that
left field.
meme? Like the only thing that it was missed on the meme, that probably that girl, the one who was in the first place, like laying down on the
Yeah.
beach, was feeling like like unconscious about herself, like self-conscious about herself. Like she was
Yeah,
probably
totally,
feeling
right?
all these things, yeah, all these insecurities. So, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. Um okay, what was one of the other questions that I got?
remember, pick the funniest one, the spices, the controversy.
Oh, the controversy. Oh, okay. I've definitely got one that's controversial. Um, okay. So, this one is about showing like stretch marks or imperfections and calling that brave. So my personal opinion on that is I don't see that as brave. I think a lot of these like, words get thrown around willy-nilly and that kind of dilutes the actual value. I think that's self-acceptance. Now, unfortunately,
Yeah.
not a lot of people accept themselves. And unfortunately, most people have hangups and insecurities and things like that. And that sucks. But I also think that calling people brave for doing that is dangerous because it lowers the standard for people. It lowers the bar for what it means to be like, uh, a capable and competent human being, right? Where it's like, hey, this should be the standard. That's not something to like, that's not setting the bar unrealistic. Like, we need to be teaching people, like, yeah, you should just fucking accept yourself and giving people the resources to do it. And it's obviously not that easy, but at the same time, trying to take something that's just such a normalized thing and put it on a
Um,
pedestal, I think that really hurts people by lowering the standards. It's like giving people participation trophies, right? Like the number
oh,
of times
yeah.
I've seen people like post something and it's like it's a they're posting a picture of their roles, and then I look in the comments, oh my god, you're so brave, you're so this, you're so that, da 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 da, and it's like, really? Like, I get the message, and so I'm not hating on the message, right? Accept yourself, get it, love it, totally agree with it, but let's stop calling that fucking brave. Like, that's like saying that a guy who's my body weight who squats 300 pounds is strong. It's like, objectively, that is false, right? And so I don't know. I just think that by setting the bar lower for people, like, I think it's doing people a disservice. It's like, I think when you tell people like, hey, you know what? I think you can do better. Like, I think you can do better. I expect more from you. Just like my friend said to me, right? When he called me out for the whole being insecure about my crooked teeth. That sucked. That made me uncomfortable. That was fucking annoying and painful. It hurt my feelings. But he was right. And he set the bar higher for me because I was setting it too low for myself. So I had to step up, right? And I think that calling things like that brave, I don't know, I just think it's a slippery slope. But I would love to
Once
hear
again, we're
on that.
misusing words without actually understand the meaning. Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly, right?
totally agree with you, but It's like expecting a student to do their homework and give them an A just because they did what they were supposed to do anyway. Or like I do have
Exactly.
clients
Like the bare
that
minimum.
they want me to literally congrats it and like make this such a big deal because they track their food. I'm like, excuse me, you're paying me for this. This is what you're supposed to do anyway. Why do you want me like to give you like a briefy day for doing the job that you're supposed to do? So it's hard.
Yeah, and I mean, like, just to be clear, like, because you brought up a really great point that I think highlights the difference there, right? Is like, yes, them tracking is just kind of doing the baseline. However, not everyone's going to be starting at the same point. So I'm going to kind of contradict myself by saying this, but like I'll have athletes who I'll give them, their nutritional approach and they're like on it 100%. And then I have some people who are wildly inconsistent, who basically just aren't even on a diet at all, even though I have them on something. And then there's everyone in between. So everyone has a different starting point. And so for the one person, just let's say tracking 3 days out of the week, or let's even just make it easier than that. Just hitting your protein targets every day, right? Just hitting your protein targets. Or at least like every week, I'm seeing your protein targets are getting higher and higher and higher. So you're getting closer to that ideal, right? That's good. That's progress, right? And that's something that I do think should be acknowledged and celebrated. But at the same time, it shouldn't be played off as, oh my God, you're so amazing. Exactly like you're saying. It's like, hey, yeah, this is great. Like your consistency is better, your adherence is better, and we clearly see an upward trajectory of your behaviors. This is fantastic because what that means is over the next 6 months, your diet is going to look very good, and you're going to see very good results because of that, right? So I think that's a great approach and explanation and type of communication to have with your clients. But at the same time, like you said, it's like, hey, motherfucker, you tracked your calories for 1 week. That doesn't mean you deserve a refeed, or that doesn't mean you deserve a weekend of binge eating. Like you're barely doing the minimum, you know? So even though you're making progress and even though that should be celebrated and we should recognize and acknowledge that, that doesn't mean that you just get to fuck around now. And in the same way, I think it's kind of the same way when it comes to like the whole body image thing and the self-acceptance. It's like, yeah, it's fantastic that you're feeling better about your body. That's great. But now that you're here, this is just a baseline, because self-acceptance is the baseline. Now it's like, okay, who do you want to be? Like when you think of yourself as like an empowered woman or an empowered man or whatever, what does that look like to you? What does that embody? Now we need to start working towards that. Self-acceptance is kind of like the baseline. And sometimes people aren't even at the baseline yet, and they need to kind of get themselves up there. But I think it's very dangerous to start changing the goalpost and lowering expectations and standards for people, because once you lower them once, you're just going to keep lowering them again and again and again. And it's like, that's why people don't get anywhere. They're like, oh, it's okay. I'll just do it tomorrow. Oh, well,
No,
I'm busy now. And they just keep making excuses. And it's like, fuck, man. It's like someone's got to have their best interest in mind, right?
well, and you as a coach know what I'm about to say, I'm sure. One thing is knowledge and like acknowledge someone for trying their best, but other thing is sugarcoating. And that's what I have to learn in a really hard way to don't do, because I have like a lot of pride of whatever I do, especially when it becomes someone putting their trust in me for taking care of their nutrition. And unfortunately, when I was starting back coaching, I just wanted to make feel them in a safe place. I want everybody to feel that I was there to motivate them. And yes, you're doing so great because you eat a broccoli, like woohoo. Now I learned that most of the people, what they need is yes, the knowledge, but they need just the structure and no sugarcoating. Because when you just keep sugarcoating, they just start getting like used to that type of dopamine of I'm doing so well that everything is okay, when I'm not actually putting my best. And if you know that you can do better, then why don't do better?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too, from that coaching style, comes with is fairly in line with the whole self determination theory, right? So, um, for those of you who don't know what self determination theory is, it's basically this theory that describes human motivation, right, between autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So, one, I wrote an article a long time ago. I can't remember even for what publication, but
You talk about this in the
one
seminar.
of the
I remember. I wrote it down.
oh
Hmm.
yeah, okay. So one of the things that I talked about was like, good coaches keep their clients accountable, but great coaches don't. You know, and a lot of that is because it's like, you know, what happens when you leave? Are you creating an autonomous athlete or individual or mom or dad or teenager or whatever? Or are you creating someone who's reliant on you? You know, and so when you give someone autonomy and you hold them to a higher standard, it says, hey, I trust you. I trust that you are going to be able to handle this, right? And it's like when sometimes when my athletes are like, oh, you know, here's my tops or here's my last warm up. What do you think I should do for my top set? Like before I used to just tell them, I'd be like, I want you to hit this weight. But now I'm like, what do you think? They're like, well, I don't know. What do you think? I'm like, figure it the fuck out. You're an athlete. You're a high level athlete. Like figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
And then they'll choose it and I'll be like, good choice, you know, because you need to trust yourself. And
And you need to prep then also
yes,
for the future.
exactly. And the more that you put trust in yourself and the more that you start doing things and then seeing it turn out well, the more that you're going to have confidence in your ability to make good decisions, right? And it's a really tricky balance, but like I've seen athletes who have come to me and I swear to God, like for the first 10 months, just a fucking shit show. Anytime we'd be making some progress with their nutrition, they'd have another relapse and just completely go back. And it's just like, oh my God. And sometimes it feels like I'm beating my head against the wall. But then one day they just have a breakthrough. And then all of a sudden they're more consistent. It's still not perfect, but it's consistent. And then we keep building and building. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, all this 10 months of failure after failure after failure and conversation after conversation has finally led to this point where now they're really getting it, you know? And I don't know where I'm going with this anymore because I kind of lost my train of thought. So
All right.
you're gonna have to take over. Oh, autonomy, yeah, autonomy. I think it's really important to build autonomy, right? And it's important to like, you know, have the coach and have the relationships and like be able to put your faith in someone else for a little bit. But then the coach also has to be doing their job and not making them reliant on them and being like, hey, you
But
know,
it's your duty to push them to their next level. If they
yeah,
could do it
exactly,
for to
exactly,
themselves, they wouldn't have go to you from the first place.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I
right.
think those are the main controversial
Yeah.
ones that I have. I've got another one that's asking about like guys who give unsolicited advice, and this is fucking common as hell. Guys do this shit all the time, and
You
it's
think
so
so?
inappropriate. I see it all the time. Not at my gym, but
Well,
at
I have a
commercial gyms,
resting
I see it
bitch
all the time.
face, so I don't. People doesn't approach to me.
Yeah, I've got a resting dick face, so I don't know. Well, why don't
But do
you give
you
one of
think,
your
okay, but
questions?
now, as a coach, not a male, I want to know one thing. If
Mhm.
you go to a gym and you see someone using, let's say, a deadlift bar for bench, is a female or male, and they're literally struggling and they're using the wrong bar, would you say something or would you just keep going and minding your business?
No, so I actually will sometimes offer advice, and in that instance in particular, yeah, I would go over. However, I think there is an appropriate way to do it and an inappropriate way. So when I used to be a coach, like when I used to coach athletes in person, one of the things that I would do is you have to prospect at the gym to get clients. And one of the ways that I would do that is I would go up to people who I'd see were having like maybe some technical faults, and I'd just go up and I would always say this: "Hey, how's it going? Have you ever had any coaching on this exercise before?" Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no, and then I would be like, "Would you mind if I offer? Would you mind if I gave you a little bit of advice?" Then they'd say yes or they'd say no. If they said yes, which most of the time they actually say yes, and they're like really happy about it. So I'm like, "Hey, look, like you're actually doing this really, really great, but I want you to think about doing this instead," right? And then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my God, I feel the exercise a lot more," or whatever, or they can lift more weight. And if they say no, then I'm like, "All right, cool, see you later," right? So I think if you approach them and you ask them and you're respectful about it, that's different. But even still, I don't really, actually, I don't ever do that, but I don't train at commercial gyms, right? I train at a private club where pretty much everyone's a competitive athlete. Like pretty much everyone there's like, let's put it this way. If you squat 600 pounds, squat over 6, bench over 4, and deadlift over 7, you're an average lifter there.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's the type of competence that leads to me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so you don't really like coaching happens more on like a friend to friend thing as opposed to like just a random person. Um, I don't I don't really do that anymore. If even if I was in a public gym, unless I saw something where I was like, oh, this person like could maybe hurt themselves, then I would maybe do it. But I'd be hesitant to do it outside of that. But I don't think it's wrong. I just think that most guys are fucking dicks and arrogant, and like they'll try to use it as a reason to pick chicks up, and they
Put
do
a
it in a
female
really rude
power
way.
lifter, Daniel, put a female power lifter in a commercial gym benching, and you will get at least three guys that either are going to be looking at it, will be taking pictures of it, or they will literally say, what are you doing? Like, you're going to hurt yourself. And
Yeah.
that is a reality. Like, that has happened to me tons of times. That's why I also avoid commercial gyms for that same reason. But this is the difference. If a guy approached me and told me like, hey, can I ask you a question? Or hey, can I give you an advice? I will listen respectfully. I will explain what I do and what I do it. If they have more to do, I will put my headphones on and keep doing my own business and ignore it. Now, if it's a guy that comes to me and tells me immediately that I'm wrong, well, my Latin attitude will take over my body, and I'm just gonna go all over him.
Yeah.
You
You're
know?
gonna be possessed by the Venezuelan god of war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
No, totally. So actually, it's funny because one of my athletes just moved, and the city she's in doesn't have a powerlifting gym, so they have a commercial gym. She's very, very strong. She's a 56 kilo weightlifter. She squats like 360. She deadlifts over 400. Very, very strong, and she's got a very good bench too. She's a
wait,
strong.
wait, wait. Are we just talking about 400 kilos or pounds?
No, pounds.
Because I'm thinking in okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking in kilos.
So like
Okay,
100, over 184 kilos. She
got it.
deadlifts, right? At 56 kilos.
That's awesome.
So she's very, very strong. And she's there clearly stronger than everyone else there. Very clearly stronger than everyone else there by a mile. And she'll tell me like guys are pissing her off because they're coming up to her and being like, "Oh, you shouldn't lift so heavy. You're going to hurt yourself. Oh, you
Yeah.
shouldn't do this. Oh, you shouldn't be arching your back. It's bad for your back." And it's like that's one thing that kind of pisses me off because it's like if I looked at someone and they were out lifting other guys, I'd be like, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to shut the fuck up because she probably knows what she's doing, you know? Like, and her form is like on point too. It's really good. So when she's lifting, it's very, very clean. And yeah, she's told me she's only been there for like, I think a month now. And she's had, I don't know how many guys approach her on different occasions. And that is something that I find kind of annoying because my sister's even told me like things like that where she's like, yeah, guys will just come up and they'll be dicks and they'll be like, oh, you should do it like this. And she's like, well, I don't really feel comfortable squatting heavier because like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't really know what I'm doing and da da da. And they're like, oh no, you should just go heavier. Don't be worried. And she's like, no. And so like so now she actually trains at my gym. I got her to come here, so now I lift with her. But yeah, I mean, she'd tell me stuff like that all the time. And even when I was working at a commercial gym, I would see it all the time. Just dudes giving
Yeah.
unsolicited advice and doing it in such a dickhead way. And it's like, bro, like, what is wrong with you? Like, you think you're going to go up to a girl and be like, you know, oh, by the way, you suck. Way instead, I know everything. And like, what do you think she's going to say? She's going to be like, oh my God, can you please have sex with me? Like, like, I swear to God, that's what guys are like thinking. They're like, maybe if I just diminish this girl and embarrass her, she's going to love me. And let's just like, I don't
Well,
know.
see, those are boys. Those are no men.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
Mhm. I every time that I go to a commercial gym, I have to remember myself that I cannot get mad if the clowns are making fun of me because I pick and I pay to get inside the circle. That's it.
Yeah, that's fair. Kind of like a play to play or pay to play situation.
Mm-hmm. But I
Um,
really like that you're like sharing your perspective as a male. A lot of this point. I think we hear a lot of what the women think as well in a woman platform, but we don't hear what the male think in a woman and male platform. Does that make sense? Like I wish the
yeah,
message can be more open up to everybody and not just to different feet of communities.
yeah. Well, I mean, like I definitely don't think that I'm speaking for me. Like I'm speaking for myself, and there are definitely certain things that I know a lot of other guys think similar, but I mean, I'm not, yeah, I'm exclusively just speaking for myself based on my experience and I guess like my values and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. It was a pretty cool conversation. So I think this is a good enough place as any to end. Before we jump off though, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram as Gabby Powerplay.
Is that it?
That's it. That's it. That's where you can find me.
You don't have a website, anything like that?
I do have a website, but it's under construction. And that's the best way to reach out to me, honestly, through Instagram. That's why I love it and I hate it.
All right, sounds good. So all that stuff is going to be linked up in the show notes then, guys. Definitely go check her out. She puts out a lot of great content. She's super, super strong and puts out a lot of really funny little memes, lots of great recipes on the regular basis. So, Gabby, thanks so much for jumping on. It was a really awesome conversation.
Thank you so much.
This is kind of cool since this is the first time that I've had more of like an open discussion that wasn't really, I don't know, didn't really have like a specific kind of plan or structure to it. So this is pretty cool. Thanks for the idea.
No, thank you so much for having me.